Hey everyone, Xeminan here with round 4 of the Illustrious Cards in Games Thursday night One Piece Locals Tournament. This would be the last round. Usually there are 5 rounds depending on the amount of players that we have. Going into this round, there were 3 undefeated players remaining. And for One Piece events, you do as many rounds until there is 1 X and O player remaining. But the third undefeated player lost the pair down, so this ended up being the de facto finals right here. It's between Bonney and Scruff Enzo. Don't worry about Bonney and Pudding as the leaders. Bonney is playing Black Yellow Luffy, and Scruff Enzo actually is playing Bonney on the other end. Most people definitely agree that Bonney is a pretty strong counter into Black Yellow Luffy, but Bonney had as good of a start as you can ask for on his 2-Don turn, having the two Garps to search for 2 cards there. So now that we're at 4 Don, it's going to be an uphill battle for Bonney in this matchup, but definitely is possible to win. That 5k swing, Enzo ends up taking that first hit, resting the other Garp on that side, and then will swing 6 with the other Garp on the end. So Enzo, pretty interestingly, taking his first 2 life early on, just wanting to have access to as many cards as he can. Enzo plays the 1-cost jewelry Bonney, searching for another Bonney, spends another 2 Don, 1 to play and 1 to activate while resting it. So that will be 2 total searches on Enzo's turn on this end. Should still have 1 Don left available, decides to pick up the Basil Hawkins, which is a great card as a blocker. Can't be KO, or if it would be KO'd by an effect, you can rest a opposing character instead. But yeah, still has the 1 Don, leaving it up, swinging 5 at Bonney, but does not take that life there. Needs to have the 1 life up, or 1 Don up on Enzo's end, so that you can rest a character on the other side. So Bonney, you always have to sequence properly against the Bonney, because you don't know what card they're gonna value in resting. So you probably usually want to get an attack off with your leader first, so that she freely rests the Garp instead, and that's exactly what he goes for. So a 5k into the 1-cost Bonney, easily enough for the kill, but rests Garp along the way. Then plays Charlotte Flampe, taking the top life in his hand and drawing a card. We can see that there is the Thunderbolt, and playing for 5 Don, playing a Luffy body, which sometimes is just what you have to do in this matchup. You can't afford to try to turn the baby versions into the bigger versions. That should be his whole turn on Birdie's end, all 6 of his Don, and now Enzo on his 7 Don turn. He did pick up the Basil Hawkins last turn from the Bonney Searcher, so that's something Bonney has to be prepared for. On 6 Don, or on 7 Don, you can play Basil Hawkins for 6 and still keep the leader active. Bonney into Garp, gonna be the KO, and there is the 6 Don spent for Basil Hawkins. So now Scruff Enzo has access to a blocker, a 7k blocker, which is pretty high power, as well as cannot, if you KO it with an effect, he can rest a opposing character instead. So excuse me, Bonney's gonna have to, if you want to try to KO it with a finger pistol or thunderbolt, as we see in Bonney have access to both in his deck, you got to make sure all of your characters are rested first before Hawkins tries to go down. So 5 at life, Bonney will trash his top life that turn to gain power and draw a card, and that's going to be a swing into Bonney, but Basil Hawkins just blocks and gives a 2k to stay on the field. With the remaining Don, Bonney will play Gecko Moria, playing two Garps. So the 2 Garps that Scruff Enzo got rid of the last 2 turns is what he puts in the from the trash on the Gecko Moria turn. No babies here yet. So two ways to look at it. You can say, all right, well, Bonney is still relatively safe at this point. He's played a Gecko Moria successfully and still has 2 life left. Or you can say, well, here we are in 10 Dan, and Luffy has not been able to set up his board to get to that cycle session properly yet. He still needs to find a way to take 2 more life before he can try to fully get the bodies on the board where he wants it to. But Bonney will swing into the rested Garp, gets rid of that, KOs it for free, and now on 9 Dan, what does Enzo want to go for? So he's going to be playing, he's holding up 8 Dan in his hand, which makes you think he could be Eustace Kid, and no, actually instead it is the Rosinante, the 8-cost Rosinante, which on play, rest his character, play a 5-cost from your hand, so you gain 13 Dan in value, right? From an 8-cost and a 5-cost. The 8k body is hard to get rid of, so you don't worry that it's rested, because you also have Basil Hawkins to block. And Carrot gets to freeze the 5-cost Luffy on this turn. It stays. It does not reactivate at the start of the turn. So overall, really strong turn from Enzo, because he gets 2 characters on the board. He freezes Luffy and keeps the Dan up to still have access to the Bonney effect. So Bonney decides to tap Luffy, the leader, this turn. Takes the swing from Gecko Moria, because 9k is hard to, that's going to cost you a minimum 3 cards to get out of that swing. Now it looks like Bonney with his 10 Dan has pretty much lost his attacks for the turn, unless you want to attach 3 to Garp and 4 to Flampe. I think it's probably better just to establish a board. The other option is, if you do have the Thunderbolt, you could just tap Flampe and Garp from your hand, or just have failed attacks with them and then play Thunderbolt or Finger Pistol to KO the Basil Hawkins, because then he won't have a target to tap. But this is definitely an important turn for Bonney to try to figure it out. Separating the Dan, still has access to all 10 of it. We do see both Thunderbolt and Finger Pistol are in the hand there, so Sabo as well. Could be a turn where you can just naturally play a Sabo just to see what other options you have. I don't mind that play if you wanted to, just to get 2 more cards of information. There's no real reason to play a Moria on this turn, even if he had it. We do see a couple of the babies in his deck there, but this Rosinante is definitely causing some problems on the other end. You also can't, I believe you can't KO the Carrot from an effect while Rosinante is on the field. So we'll go for the Sabo play instead from Bonney, which I definitely understand, definitely agree with that, just to see what those next 2 cards were, what do you have access to in this spot. See a couple of Luffys, baby Luffys. There's at least 1 Sabo, Thunderbolt. There's the 3 Brothers Searcher as well, but you're already down to 5 Dan remaining on the turn. So he trashes both Thunderbolt and the 3 Brothers Searcher, passing as well, leaving that Dan up, knowing there was nothing else he'd be able to establish on the board. Not even, trying to go for a swing, because you really couldn't do anything that turn. So Rosinante was able to be perfectly safe that turn on Enzo's end and can go for the swing here. So Bonney with the counter in hand, the 2-cost counter. We're looking at his top 2 life right there. That could be crucial depending on if there's a particular order you want them to trigger in, or if you want to if you think you're only going to take 1 life this turn, if one of those 2 cards is a Big Brother, you can leave that on the bottom, and we know he has enough to it. So he will re-put his cards in the order he prefers. That's going to be a 6k into the Luffy 6k. Looks like it won't be, or actually it's an 8k swing, because Luffy still has 8k power, because he did his effect the last turn. So that Carrot swing does not get the KO. And now playing the 9-cost Zoro was going to be enough. It seems to be a bit of a conversation about this Carrot and Luffy, because Luffy still had the dice attached to it, but it was rested the last turn, so I'm not sure. I'm sure they're speaking with the judge right now, having a conversation about it. But it looks like maybe it all works out in the end. Maybe that 2K was spent on the Luffy, the character Luffy instead of the leader. Either way, looks like they're going to continue on with the game, whatever the conversation with the judge was. Enzo did spend 9 Dan playing Zoro, having 1 Dan available as well. So pretty big deal for him. And of course, because Carrot, it's on play and when attacking, while Carrot swung, even though it didn't get a KO, the Luffy was still rested, because it's the Carrot, the freeze effect still takes place on attack as well. So Gecko Moria gets the attack in, KOs Carrot, but Luffy, leader, is rested from Bonney, leader's effect. He does have access to all 10 of his Dan on this turn. You know, there's the rested Rosinante. The Zoro is going to be a massive problem the next turn. Remember, this is the de facto finals match, because I'm sure they probably heard by now, halfway through the round. Going into it, there were 3 undefeated players left, but the third player lost the pair down, and room or information travels fast in the room. So I think the players might be aware that this is essentially the finals match. The winner of this match wins the local here on Thursday night at Illustrious, so there's even more added pressure to this matchup. But looking with a massive amount of cards in hand for Bonney, and that's really what Luffy needs. He needs a lot of cards in the hand, because essentially your hand is your resource, right? Since when your life are flipped up face up, if you were to lose a life, it goes to the bottom, or take a life I should say, it goes to the bottom of your deck instead of your hand. So really needing to hold on to all of those. Gonna be a 5 cost to play, or spend 5 Dan to play another Sabo, so protecting his side from KOs, drawing 2 cards, trashing 2. That's gonna be the Rocket Luffy. And then what else would he like to trash? Gonna be a baby Luffy on that side. So 2 blockers for Bonney, 2 life still on his end. It's not like he's close to being knocked out, but of course Zoro gets 3 swings in next turn, as you can just tap the Dan to swing with Zoro 3 times. So even if Bonney feels safe, could be very close to not. 7K swing is not going to get the KO, and Basil Hawkins will block and counter 1K. So Sabo, by attacking with Sabo, now Bonney only has 1 blocker next turn, but it might have felt like Bonney might have felt so far behind that it's a position that I need to be in. I have to attack with this blocker just to try to get a card out of his hand, or if he does give me the character, that would also be a thing. But Rosinante swinging into 5 cost Luffy, obviously going to take that. You don't want to waste your cards on there. And that's going to be a 12K swing into Gecko. Sabo blocking that turn. Now he has access to a Sabo in the discard, in the trash. Gonna restand the 1 Dan to swing 12 at Gecko again. That would cost 2 2Ks at minimum in hand. Bonney does have some stuff. He actually does have the 2 cost counter again. Gets to look at his life that he set it up. Swaps it around this time around. So rechecking and swapping it around for a 3rd time. We'll swing 12K into this Gecko Moria, and Bonney has a lot of cards in hand. I think there's a Flampe in there. I don't believe there's a Hiyori, so I'm not sure if there are other 2Ks in hand to counter, but there is the Flampe and Perona, so that's 4K counter. Enzo spends his entire turn trying to KO Gecko Moria and comes in unsuccessful. So you'd have to see that as a win for Bonney. Enzo does get to play Eau Rouge, which will allow him to restand a Dan at the end of every turn, which is nice. So Enzo decides to tap down the leader, not the Sabo. I thought maybe you'd want to get rid of the Sabo. Since you have 2 life and 2 blockers, thought maybe tap down the Sabo, force it to get KO'd the next turn, but he doesn't want a big swing from Bonney's Luffy leader this time around. I think Enzo's playing this really smartly because you don't want, if you can keep Bonney at 2 life, that's much more beneficial for you as the Bonney player, because if he gets to 1 life, then he can have a Flampe or, you know, some other things like the Luffy right there, and just get himself down to 0. But he does it anyway. Plays the 5 cost Luffy, trashes that last life down to 0. Now it's time for Luffy leader to go to work, attaching 2 Don, trashing a card to put 2 5 cost brothers from his trash in hand into his life in any order he wants. And we know he's got, we see the baby Sabo in his hand. We know for sure he has that, but does he still have access to a baby Luffy? Because that way you can spend 4 Don, get up to 9k power on your leader on your defensive turn. This is really a big back and forth struggle between this Bonney and Luffy matchup, and I've played this matchup before. It's definitely a long drawn out matchup, depending on if the Luffy can get to the late game. But then of course Bonney loves the late game, right? You have Rosinante, you got Zoros, you could have Kids, you could have 10 cost Don Quixote, Doflamingos, right? So not really the end of the world for Scruff Enzo to get to the late game like we are now. There's going to be the first baby Sabo to play out the blocker Sabo, draw 2, trash 2. This is a good way to get rid of counterless cards in your hand or things that you think you're not going to need. Looks like Bonney is kind of contemplating if he wants to get rid of the finger pistol or not. Decides to just trash 2 baby Luffys on the turn instead. There's the second Sabo, drawing 2 more cards. It's going to be 2 Ice Age. I think that's probably the answer there, is just to trash maybe 1 Ice Age and another card, but I don't really see how much value Ice Age is going to give you for the rest of it. So yes, Bonney decides to trash both of those, and now the Luffy leader is a 9k character. 4 costs for finger pistol to KO the Urus on that turn, and that's a really strong, effective use of the Don from Bonney. So he started at 2 Don with the excuse me, the 2 cost Luffy. He knew that Star Deck Luffy was on the top of his life, so he got that, went down to 0. Put 2 on the leader, and then spent 4 on the 2 Sabos. So really, really well done there for Bonney in what is a pretty tough matchup here. So we'll see what Enzo can do. He has 3 swings with Zoro. He has the big swing with Rosinante. You can attack with Basil Hawkins as well. But again, this is into a 9k. Leader. So he's got 4. Enzo's trying to do some math. He got 4 cards in hand. Search for something with this Bonney. Only going to cost you 1 Don. You know you need at least 3 Don available for Zoro to restand twice, plus any Don you want to attach to Zoro for the turn. So, you know, do you go for game with Zoro? Do you try to KO Gecko Moria? This is a tough call, and that's why Black Arrow Luffy is so good, because even in bad matchups, like inherently having a 9k leader when you have 2 blockers out is going to be a struggle. So he's going to add 5 Don to Zoro. That's a 14k swing at life. Sabo is going to have to block that first one. Sabo blocks the second one. He's going to tap it again, 14k. Can Bonney get out of that? He'd have to dump his entire hand, so I don't even know if it's worth it, if that's the better option. Looks like that's 11, 12, or 13k in his hand. I'm not sure. I guess maybe he countered 1 more card than I thought, because I'm not sure if I'm counting right, but thought he might have needed 1 more card to get out of that, but maybe I counted wrong. I'm not sure. Anyway, we move on. Bonney does successfully make it through the turn does not attack with Rosinante or Basil Hawkins or the Bonney, because it was a 9k leader, so you don't have enough Don. You would need 2 Don for Basil Hawkins, or you need 4 Don for the Bonney. So Burney kind of kept himself very safe there, making it through those 3 very scary Zoro swings. He's going to swing 9. Burney will swing 9 with Gecko Moria, and Enzo has to decide which character he wants to tap. Does he want to tap the Luffy that can make himself an 8k and make it's harder to block an 8k swing, or do you want to stop the leader that can get all the way up to a 9k power and be an 11k swing once they actually swing for the turn? Just has to stop the leader. I think that's an understandable position. It's harder to get out of a theoretical 11k swing, right, than it is an 8k swing. So it'll cost the 0 cost event for 3k power and a Scratchman of Pooh for another 2,000. So that's a 10k block or 10k counter into the 9k swing. Now Luffy will power himself up. This is an 8k swing into Bonney for that last life, no trigger. So Burney has a bunch of Don. He puts 2 on the Luffy to activate it, and this is the safe play for sure. You don't want to go all in, swing with the Sabo, and find yourself in a bad spot. Remember, Enzo still has Basil Hawkins, so you could swing for as much as you want, but Hawkins will block that game-ending swing. So Burney has to play it safe on this turn. There's the Gecko Moria. We know that there's many baby Sabos in the trash. Can be able to play out 2 of them here and go up to 3 Sabos on the board as a 9k leader with 3 blockers and all of the cards in your hand, being able to draw 2 trash to get whatever cards you want. Probably just want to keep 2ks or something, really. Yeah. So 9k leader, 3 blockers on the board, and Burney gladly passes back to Enzo. So what is Enzo gonna do? He's gonna swing 11 with the Zoro. It looks like swinging 11 at the leader. I think Enzo can smell the victory. He thinks it's close here. So Burney only has 1 card in hand. That 11 means he has to take it. He's looking at it, saying, no, I swung 11. Okay, you can't get out of that. Second Zoro swing, 3rd Zoro swing, all 3 Sabos defeated. Rosinante for the win. And what an incredible final match to end our One Piece locals matchup here in round 4. Burney, gotta give him credit, won on stream in round 3, made it to the finals here in round 4, and in a really tough matchup. He was very close, came very close for the Black Arrow Luffy to come away with the victory here. So congratulations to Enzo, played incredibly well, keeping the Rosinante safe all the turns it was out, getting so many massive swings with the Zoro as well, multiple turns in a row, and he actually blocked multiple times with Basil Hawkins, but always counted out of it. So that last Basil Hawkins staying on the field every turn is definitely what helped Enzo win this game. Congratulations to Enzo winning the Illustrious Cards and Games Thursday Night One Piece locals. Thank you everybody. If you watched the 3 rounds that we've uploaded from last week's local, thank you so much. This is Xeminan. Again, we're going to have this every time for every week. But for now, like, subscribe, and we'll see you next time for more One Piece.